Um, Good afternoon. Welcome to our Persons with Disabilities Committee. And we can quickly start with introductions. Do we have the people on Zoom?
Yep.
We have Dan Vasquez from
Office of Emergency Services.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
We are going to do introductions. I was trying to see, honestly, if Rakina was on, because I know she was going to try to get on right away.
she is not yet.
Not on yet. Okay. I'm happy to have you start, Dan, or we can just go around us quickly and then come to anyone else that's on Zoom. I'm Michelle Cruz, the current chair. A long-time disability activist. I'm blind. So I bring that perspective, and I'm also part of the California Alliance of Retired Americans. So I hear a lot about both senior issues and disability issues. Carolyn?
My name is Dr. Carolyn Smith. I am a combat wounded Army veteran from Operation Iraqi Freedom. I have been on multiple appointed boards for the veteran space and now persons with disability space. I am obviously a veteran advocate, and I'm always happy to be here.
I'm Jeanette Shelton. I am representing Supervisor Lawson Raymer for District 3. I have a career background in at the University of California and Kaiser in disability management, and I'm the vice chair of the committee.
I did neglect in my introduction to say that I'm representing, proudly representing District 4, our new supervisor, Monica Montgomery staff, and I Carolyn also another issue.
Yeah, I forgot that one too. So I'm happily representing Joel Anderson's district.
Thanks. Okay, now that I know that Dan is on there, do you want to introduce yourself and then also anyone else that's on Zoom, Katie?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Dan Vasquez, formerly with the Office of Emergency Services for several years, where I led efforts for planning for people with disabilities and access and functional needs, before moving on to the Department of Human Resources, where I work with the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion team there. But most recently, and the reason why I'm here with you all today, is I'm on a special assignment with our Chief Administrative Officer on a Board of Supervisors action item that I'm looking to you all for some feedback on. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. I figured somebody would be here for that. I neglected it for our staff to introduce themselves and then anyone else that's on Zoom.
Hi, this is Todd Hood. I am staff liaison for the Committee for Persons with Disabilities and the County Chief Privacy Officer and ADA Title II Coordinator.
Katie?
This is Katie McKnight. I'm also with the Department of Human Resources and here to support the committee and their administrative needs.
Is there anyone else on Zoom?
Elaine Pitpit. Elaine Pitpit here with the Department of Human Resources, also here to support the committee.
Are you on Zoom, Elaine?
I am.
That's the first time. Am I missing anyone?
No, that's everyone.
Okay. So,
Rakina is just joining right now.
yay. Rakina, can you hear us?
Yes. Hello.
A quick introduction, we were just finishing the introductions. The only person you don't know is a gentleman who's gonna talk to us about board supervisor action, and Dan, I didn't catch your last name, I'm sorry.
Vasquez.
Vasquez. Do you wanna do a quick introduction, Rakina, and then we'll, I guess, start with Dan, so he doesn't have to hang out if he doesn't want to, but he's certainly welcome to.
Hello, my name is Rakina Kamei, and I am the wife of a disabled veteran who's a tetraplegic. And I'm also a teacher in San Diego Unified, working with new teachers who teach students with a variety of disabilities. So I have sat on this committee, may possibly sit on this committee again. And so I'm just here and happy to be here so that I can see what we're working on.
Thanks, Rakina. I know Jessica was planning to get on, but she said it would be probably close to 3:15, so maybe when she does come on, if you would let me know, Katie or time.
Yes.
Do you want to start, Dan, so that you can not have to stay? If you don't want to, but you're absolutely welcome to.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So it looks like they are sharing the slideshow now. This is the title slide. It reads Emergency Management Board of Supervisors Memo, with a few photos of some sheriff's employees, a firefighter, someone who works with Department of Public Works. It looks like maybe someone in a library setting, and then another young lady in a hallway. First and foremost, I just wanted to thank you all for really giving me this space today. I think both of these things are very near and dear to my heart, both the emergency management component, but also the incorporation of making sure that our people with disabilities have a voice and a seat at the table when we talk about really anything. The next slide is the goal of the memo from the Board of Supervisors, which reads, report back within 60 days on what more can be done to strengthen our regional capabilities in the 4 phases of emergency management, including but not limited to resources needed to establish a recovery division in the county's Office of Emergency Services and convene community outreach meetings to understand the needs of our diverse communities during emergencies and throughout the recoveries, that their input can be incorporated into the assessment. And after discussing with the Chief Administrative Officer, there's some underlying conversations from our Board of Supervisors as to the intent behind this that have stemmed from the recent flooding disaster really impacting central San Diego. And so there are 4 dot points on the slide. The first one, strengthen our regional capabilities in the 4 phases of emergency management by establishing recommendations for best practices that will better serve the community. The second dot point reads, better understand our role as government and what we can do to meet the community needs. The third dot point, no longer view emergency response through a government lens, but to shift our focus on positive results for the community. And the last dot point, explore how we can better.
Dan, that last one?
Yep, the third dot point, no longer view emergency response through a government lens, but shift our focus on positive results for the community. And the last dot point, explore how we can better prepare for the next emergency. Next slide, please. So this slide is our outreach strategy. It outlines the community outreach efforts, which include reaching out to the community that have submitted damage surveys for having impacts from this recent storm. It involves working with the Live Well San Diego community leadership teams, including their newsletter database and their leadership team sector calls. You all today, the Committee for Persons with Disabilities, the community emergency response teams, fire safe councils, community planning groups, and just a recognition that our website, community forums and surveys will be translated and interpretation services provided in the 8 threshold languages. Our stakeholder outreach includes the Fire Chiefs Association on Emergency Management, statewide operational area emergency managers, our partner relay network, the Access and Functional Needs Working Group, tribal nations, the Office of Equity and Racial Justice, and voluntary organizations that are active in disaster. Next slide, please. This slide is the focus areas of emergency management. There are, this was roughly about 30% of what the federal focus areas are, with the notion that we have only 60 days to perform research, conduct community outreach, stakeholder engagement, draft recommendations, present those recommendations back to the community for input, analyze the feedback, and give this back to the Board of Supervisors within that 60-day period. I'm going to read off the following areas that we'd like to focus on. The first one is community preparedness. This is when members of the community are personally prepared for disasters. We'd like to focus on what the planning, public information, and operational coordination of that looks like. The next one is mitigation. These are proactive actions that decrease the likelihood of disasters or to make the impact from those disasters less severe. We're going to look to focus on planning, public information, operational coordination, and infrastructure systems. The third one is response. These are actions that local government and disaster volunteers take to save lives and stop more damage to property during the disaster. Focus areas here are planning, public information, and operational coordination. And the last one is recovery. The actions to get the things and services communities need to rebuild and restore a sense of normalcy. The focus areas here are going to be planning, public information, operational coordination, infrastructure systems, economic recovery, housing, health, and social services. Next slide, thank you. So this timeline has already been adjusted. So I'll read through what it currently says and also provide you with kind of where our updates stand today. So the title of this slide is What to Expect, Draft. I'm glad we put the draft piece in there. So on January 30th is when the board letter went forward and was approved by the Board of Supervisors, instructing the Chief Administrative Officer on this action. On February 15th, so last Thursday, we had a kickoff meeting that included internal county departments as well as members of the community. We hoped to have a community needs survey open last Friday. Our new date on this is to be determined. I'm hoping that by the end of this call, we can say that it has been successfully sent out. So after this meeting, I will send an email to Todd and Katie in hopes that an update is accompanying that with the resources to take those surveys, which also has a website associated with it. Next week, we're planning on having 2 community needs webinars, one at noon and one at 5:30 p.m. This date is also to be determined because in an ideal world, we would have allowed the community at least 2 weeks notice before the webinar. However, with the short turnaround time and with our current approval process with the survey and the website, we have not yet been able to publicize this. So that date may change as well. On March 4th, we were planning on having the community needs survey close so that we have an opportunity to analyze the data. 2 days after that, March 6th, we are planning on posting our recommendations and having a second survey open that is specific to the community providing feedback on the recommendations that we've drafted. On March 13th, we plan on hosting 2 more community webinars, both at noon and 5:30 p.m. where members of the community can come in, hear about what the draft recommendations look like, and provide comment on those as well.
What day was that?
Tentatively March 13th. And tentatively March 15th is when that recommendations survey would close, allowing us time to incorporate final community feedback into the recommendations and provide the final memo back to the Board of Supervisors on March 29th. Next slide, please.
You want feedback all at the end, or do you want feedback as you're going along?
As soon as possible, hopefully on this slide, which is questions and open discussion, if anyone already has ideas, the sooner we can get feedback, the sooner we can start incorporating that into our draft recommendations. But we do appreciate the time that it may take to really think on some of the ideas that could really help the whole community with this. This last slide has contact information. My email address is Daniel, DANIEL .Vasquez, VASQUEZ @sdcounty.ca.gov.
Hi, Dan, Carolyn. I wanted to add a couple of things that may assist you, may not. So,
Yes.
I ironically, my PhD is literally in your lane, so it's Homeland Security Emergency Management. So I really appreciate the fact that you crafted this for the San Diego County as a whole. Great job on that. As somebody who comes from rural San Diego County, the problem that I have found, and I hope that you guys can sort that out, is that in the rural areas, CNT, Lakeside, for example, they are excluded from a lot of the county and county city programs for emergency preparedness, disaster preparedness, solar, et cetera, because of the climate equity index map that excludes a lot of the rural areas that really have to be on the forefront of emergency preparedness. Again, because we have a unique issue in the rural areas, which is a very underserved area. Poway, Humboldt, Lakeside, CNT, all of those things. So have you, my first question is, have you engaged with the planning boards in rural San Diego County for this task?
He's on his assignment, so he would not have done that.
When I say you, I meant anybody that's in this task, because your biggest need for emergency and disaster preparedness actually comes from the rural area, because we have the fire, we have the floods, we have a host of issues that city doesn't have. Not saying city is not as important. My piece is coming from the rural area and asking, is anybody within your survey found a way to link into the rural community planning boards that are going to assist you in the answers you may be looking for?
I really appreciate that question, and this is a regional effort, and I want to just be very clear that this is not a city-focused endeavor. It stemmed from the disaster that recently occurred in the city. However, from the county's perspective, we need to really break down those jurisdictional barriers that, like you pointed out, those index maps that might exclude based upon a line in the sand. And disasters really don't have jurisdictional boundaries. And so we are taking an entire San Diego County approach to this. This is actually the very first community outreach component of this, but we are planning on working with all of the community planning groups in each of the rural communities via email, and we're working with the fire safe councils as well as the community emergency response teams, both in the incorporated cities and our rural areas, really to hone in and identify with the understanding that each community not only do they see different disasters, but their resilience to one disaster may be very different from another. And so really having that approach of listening into the different aspects of how disasters affect different communities is of the utmost importance to us. So I really appreciate you bringing that up.
And I appreciate that, because I'm gonna tell you something. So August 20th, when Hurricane Hillary came through, or Tropical Storm Hillary came through, if you actually Google, Iraq veterans home destroyed by Tropical Storm Hillary, that's me. My home in East County, in rural East County Lakeside area, was completely destroyed by Hurricane Hillary. Because President Biden did not declare a state of emergency, I had no access to federal funding, state funding, or county funding. And so this is a very personal thing that you're bringing up today, because I'm struggling with a whole bunch of issues that the county, and I have emails from the county that say, sorry, we can't help, there was no disaster declared. So you have a disabled veteran who is really invested in what you're doing here. And so any way that I can help you or communicate with you offline, I'm happy to link you into any of the planning boards and planning groups in the rural area. I'm sure you have the access, but I'm happy to facilitate quick conversations so you can know who you're chatting with. And then the other question I had is make sure that you guys keep an eye on the legacy systems when you're trying to update emergency management. I think that's one of the biggest problems. Is that the older legacy systems, again, in the rural community, are going to have an issue with budgeting to upgrade disaster preparedness outlets and opportunities. So hopefully your survey is going to ask the stakeholders what can be done to improve legacy systems to more of a modern, updated system. So those two things. And then last thing is, if I can get a copy of your slides, or the board can get a copy of your slides, that'd be fantastic.
Yes, please, Todd, Katie, feel free to share the slides. And Todd or Katie, also, if you can give me contact information, I would love to reach out to you and talk more about your experience, and if you could support by getting the right folks to the table to have some conversations as well, that would be very helpful.
We'll do that, no problem.
So Dan, did you finish? I was trying to get you to be able to finish.
The last thing I was going to say is really what the ask is today from you, if you haven't all inferred already. But it's that we're here to listen to you all, and really the county wants to know how we can be better, and what we can do to best support you and the people that you represent, and the reason and the motives of why you're here today. And so, we want to look and find the gaps. We don't want to use this as an opportunity to pat ourselves on the back. We recognize that maybe we do some things well, but we are not naive in knowing that there is a lot of room for growth for the communities. If it's training, resources, recovery, really the sky's the limit, and we want to hear about it. And so thank you for your time.
Well, I have some specific things, but I want to give Jeanette a chance first.
I appreciate that.
Jeanette? If you don't.
No, I just have one question. These community surveys, how do those get sent out? Do you have to go to the website? Do they get pushed out to local residents?
Right. So we're going to try and utilize about a dozen different distribution lists and methods to send this out via email. We're also planning on opportunities like this to talk about it, so that people can expect or know where to find it. We plan on creating flyers with QR codes, so that if someone just wanted to scan it with their phone and take the survey from a mobile device, they could do that. We plan on having paper copies at there's a few focus groups that we plan on doing in I believe one is in North County and one is in Central County as of right now that are scheduled. And really just hopefully word of mouth. There's been talk of a text message capability that the Health and Human Service Agency has through a few of their programs with several thousand folks. So with such a compressed timeline, we are open to ideas, and really we want to do as much as possible to get that out there. But I'm happy to take notes and create things on the fly that will hopefully get it out to even one more person.
So the first thing is when you get your contact information, please always include a telephone number. So I don't have access to email. And there's a lot of people that don't, and there's a lot of people that don't have access to a computer. So for whatever reason, sometimes financial, sometimes because they're blind. So please always, always, always include the telephone number. That's the common denominator. On your timeline, it would be helpful for someone like me that you always put the day of the week as well as the date. So that it's Saturday or Monday. These are like little things, but they make a difference in people being able to categorize it. And like for me, I can't write it down. On the survey, I have concerns about how people with disabilities will be able to access it, like myself. So for me, what is needed is the ability to have someone write it, or if you had an auto set up, because I definitely have had a ton of surveys, that come to my phone and where I answer questions. But having it set up where someone can call in to the county or wherever, that would be really helpful. I will tell you there were major issues with the link that the county put out, and I was one of the people, many people, tried to make sure that that link got out everywhere so that we were able to qualify for FEMA funds. But the problem was that people I, was working with, I live in Southeast San Diego, so we were 1000% in the midst of the worst of it. And, all of us volunteers, community people were, working 20 hours a day to try to get people into safe situations. They did not have, computers working, et cetera, et cetera. So the more that you can create a situation that actually would allow people to get assistance in filling it out, that would have been really helpful because we asked about that. Also, the more you share the information, so a councilwoman in Lemon Grove was really trying to get, and she was there every day, like 18 hours a day, working with the people, mostly in her community in Spring Valley. But she could not get the names that when we were all getting people to fill out the form, and she couldn't get the names to come back to her so she could actually physically offer them help in the city. Or even if it was given back to the city, it didn't matter, but it was not easily accessible. And the lack of sharing with the cities involved, with other people whose hands are out to help, who actually are down the street from where this person was having difficulty with her door, et cetera, that would be helpful to you. And it would certainly be helpful to creating that regional approach. I think those are the main, the other thing was that survey link, or the link to the survey to qualify for the FEMA funds, it got closed too early. I know that you closed it, when you thought, oh, we have enough for our goal. But I would like us to be using opportunities to the fullest extent that they can be used, and continuing to collect that information. Because many people, I was volunteering at the Sherman Community Center. I was at Spring Valley when we had that set up, then, we moved it to Mountain View. All of these resource centers, people after like 3 or 4 days, or, after they got the kids into a safe place, then they were ready to deal with things like that. And the link got closed, and I understand that it's not closed because you had it set up for a purpose. But I would love you to be thinking longer term than just the one purpose in this case that you had in mind, because collecting that data absolutely would be helpful. Even if we didn't meet just the minimum, if we met, half more or whatever, it's helpful to know where people are having challenges. And I know the city council people in the various cities were absolutely looking for that information. So just making it go, I guess having a longer term view of how that might be helpful. Instead of just, okay, let me check that off my list and go on to the next thing.
Well, I think that goes right back to one of the bullet points of not looking at it through a government lens, but looking at it through the lens of what the community needs. The government needed a certain number to reach a goal, but what the community needed was to be able to continue to provide the input. And that's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, and in addition, Dan, I was thinking that you could conduct a outreach with the libraries, with the PFWs, DABs, Legions, to get more interaction. And then you can kind of get a secondary circular ring of other events that are in San Diego that you could place a booth at, or those things. Because again, my perspective comes from rural areas where we don't get any of your information, and the percentage of people that have the internet or a viable phone that we even know about this survey is not happening in East County, because I was on the planning group for Lakeside, elected to that position. And I assure you, in the rural areas, the biggest issue is regional surveys that we need to be a part of that we're not, because people don't get that information in the rural areas. So again, anything I could do to help you in the outreach in the rural areas, I'm happy to do.
So there's also the elections coming up. So the voting centers are gonna be opening shortly. And having that available, I know most people are voting by mail, but it would be a good thing to have it out. And honestly, it could also be sent, moving forward, every time we send out something from the register of voters. That would be a good way to reach most people. But definitely the voting centers that are coming up right now. So those are, and I would like to talk to you offline. And again, are you able to add something to your slides, like on your phone number?
Sure, absolutely. I can give it to, I can call it out right now if you've got a pen and paper, or I can have Todd.
Why don't we'll provide it, Dan, if you want.
Perfect.
The best number for you, we'll provide that.
So actually, I was asking if you could add it to your slide right now, so that people that are watching this, or that when we replay it, because we do record these, that it would be on the slide.
I think we'll be able to provide the best number, and we can put that into our minutes.
Okay, but can it not be added to the slides, Dan?
Community has the slides. Dan doesn't have, it, right?
But Dan sent them to her.
I have the slides.
Okay, and Dan sent them to you, right?
Yes, just for timing purposes, it's 3:37, just for recognizing.
Okay. Actually, Dan, I'm gonna give you my number and if you could call me at the end of the meeting, so I have yours, I'd appreciate
Go ahead.
it. 619-888-4974.
Got it. Thanks, Michelle.
And Dan, I just sent you an email.
So, other,
You know, the last thing I was gonna add is that, that I have personally run into, is that, you open up exemptions, like she was saying, I have brain injury, so I completely forget her name every time. But the exemptions, when you're doing, funding, grants, et cetera, exceptions for extraordinary circumstances, because again, I should have fallen into that and I did not. And so the exemption, for example, for permit fees from the county only started like a week or two ago. But you know, I had to have paid for all those things and I was in a hurricane. So, I'd love to talk more, not now, we don't have the time, but for crafting exemptions, with good proof and stories and all that other stuff, so that people can fall into those and not have to wait for the third storm where everybody else gets in and those other two didn't.
so the other thing that I would add as someone who was literally out there at the different centers, when you close down the Spring Valley one and, you know, decided to put it in the hands of the cities, et cetera, it, I mean, I do very much appreciate that they gave us, they put aside $10 million. The Board of Supervisors did do, you know, really good work quickly. But it just made it really hard that we knew it was closing down on that Sunday. And it actually was closed during the days of the rain that continued. But we didn't know where else to go. Like it wasn't, all of it was word of mouth. You know, go back to the Jackie Robinson YMCA. And then, you know, we opened up Mountain View and it just was very, very hard to find out what was available for resources, and also the resources were very split, and that had pros and cons, because then people could get them closer to where they were. But it also meant that organizations like the ACLU, like the Legal Aid, like, you know, places like that didn't have the capacity to split up all of their staff, you know, working disaster hours. So just if there's some thought in prevention of how we can handle that, like there would always be a main place that would stay open for a month and not like 3 days after the disaster and then have it moving. It just would be beneficial. And maybe also people should be able to sign up, because there were, you know, there's a lot of people like me that may not be part of a senior group or whatever, and I wouldn't get that information. I only got it because I'm involved in my community. So being able to, maybe they could say, sign up individually, that they would get information even from the county. Thanks. Do you have any questions back for us on the feedback we're just giving you?
Hold 1 second, Dan, I have one more, on Facebook, and don't quote me on every single one, but in the majority of the rural planning boards, they actually have a Facebook page. So, like Lakeside, et cetera, you may want to consider having your team search social media, for the actual, Facebook pages of the planning groups and the planning boards and the planning, teams out in rural, San Diego County, and then, contact them, and that's the entire list of the community inside of each of those Facebook groups. So you will reach the underserved, in my position for the rural, area by looking through their, looking for their, social media pages.
I thank you all so much. I have a page and a half full of notes, and although I can't promise that all the wishes are going to come true, what I can promise is I'll make them known and I'll fight for it. So I have no questions for you all, but you have or will have my contact information, and I did just get word that we've got the green light to go live with our website and survey. So let me quickly circle back to make sure that we can get a phone number set up for people to call in for the survey component of it. And hopefully by the time the meeting minutes are out, it will also include the information on how to access either the survey electronically, or by paper, by voice, as well as the website. So just thank you all so much. I really do appreciate it.
And you'll give me a call after.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dan. So next up on the agenda is, there's no one for statement of just cause or emergency circumstances. So voting on January meeting minutes.
Okay, Jessica is not on yet?
Correct.
Okay. I actually didn't have them read to me, so I'll defer to someone else.
Did you move it? You did. I read them, and unless anybody objects, I make a motion, for approval of the January meeting minutes as presented.
Jeanette, do you want to second it?
I second.
I didn't read them, so I don't want to do that. So without objection, we'll pass the January meeting minutes.
And next on is non-agenda comment.
Anybody on Zoom? Okay, I would just say I'm glad that Dan came on. I actually thought it was for a different issue, but that is valuable since we've just been through it, and I'm sure we'll have to go through it again. Any public comment or non-agenda public comment?
No.
Okay. Next item.
The next item is updates to the administrative code for boards, commissions, and committees. So just informing the committee members that the boards, commissions, and committees unit of the clerk of the board has requested to help make changes to the administrative code that would assist boards, committees, and commissions to maintain and to acquire and to maintain and retain volunteers. One of the recognitions is that in a few of the committee ordinances that are the appointing authority for committees, there are term limits. And the Committee for Persons with Disabilities is one of those, recognizing that for some of the committees, there are no volunteers, and therefore there may be waivers that are made, but you can't waive the law, which is the administrative ordinance. Waivers, or actually so there are two places where for the Committee for Persons with Disabilities, term limits exist. One is in the ordinance, and then the other is in the policy that gives rise to the boards, commissions, and committees, or community advisory boards, and that's A74. So the question for many of the boards, commissions, and committees that have an ordinance that stipulates term limits is, would it assist your committee in acquiring and retaining volunteers for your committee if the ordinance removed or did not include the term limits? So that's one question. The other is, since there is a desire to make changes to the ordinance, that this may give the committee an opportunity to make other recommendations for ordinance changes. That topic has come up in the past. So this is an opportunity for the committee to consider those thoughts.
And I wanted to make a, consideration. Obviously, everybody knows that this committee struggles with having, a full board and whatnot. And a lot of that is due because each of us have very unique disabilities that sometimes preclude us, even when we don't want to attend meetings. So it would be it would be a recommendation for me to request to allow this committee to have virtual meetings, open up the ability to get more volunteers into our board. This consideration would help this committee out tremendously because as we see today, we only have 3 people here. So that would be the primary recommendation, and everybody who has been at this board and board meetings have consistently requested that we have an exemption or a consideration for a genuinely disabled board group with everybody and their disabilities. And again, I have brain injury, so if I'm hiccuping this is why. We really do need to have that sort of lateral movement to be able to have virtual meetings when our disabilities are too much for us to come to this committee.
I definitely agree with that. I think I like the idea of it being hybrid, but I'm also, I would be okay with that just being virtual, but primarily it should for sure have a virtual component.
Right, because I think it wouldn't have anything to do with the length of time in service, because I think the fear of doing or removing that is that somebody could be here for 7 years and show up 3 times. So if we remove the term limits, we may put ourselves in a position that we can't get rid of people who aren't showing up, even virtually showing up.
No, we actually already checked, and that was how we had Candy being removed.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if that's lifted, wouldn't that present us in the same position?
The term limits would be a different, you still have, and I can bring it up, there's still the vacancy.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, I agree 1000% with getting rid of the term limits. I mean, I think I'm fine, to me, there's an automatic term limit in that the supervisors get to choose. And so the supervisors are up for election every 4 years. And they have term limits. So to me, I would like to see us get rid of artificial term limits, because if another supervisor wants to keep the said person on, that should be their ability, and especially if you have people that are committed to a particular arena. And I also 1000% agree with Carolyn that we need to find out how we can have the committee, the exception, a waiver, I don't know what. But that would not, that we would at least have a virtual component if we didn't just make it 100% virtual, given our circumstances. And I would want inclusion. And if there's someone who's bedridden, period, that is unable to leave their house, but they certainly have information and valuable lived experience to share, I want them to be able to fully participate. And they can always come virtually, yes, but that's not being a member. So I don't think anyone on the committee is gonna disagree with that, we really want that.
Yeah, the only thing I disagree on is term limits. Because I think new blood comes into boards for good reason. And every board I've ever served on, and both of these ladies I know have served on many boards, you don't want, you really do want turnover at the right times. And so I'm still an advocate of term limits on the cycle of the board supervisors that we're speaking on behalf of or working on behalf of, because if the supervisor comes in that really wanted somebody else, an advocate for something very specific, we're handcuffing them and kind of making them keep us when.
You're actually not, because the supervisor at any time can change any of their people, period, in the middle of the term or with a new supervisor.
And I totally don't disagree, but I mean in the sense of it doesn't always look good, right? You're not gonna tell a disabled person, I don't want you anymore. And so in this era of being understanding and inclusive and all of those things, you really want somebody to properly term out. And if they wanna come back, then they come back the same way everybody else does. So that it is very equitable to everybody on both sides of that coin.
Okay,
And I don't disagree with you, I'm just saying that's just, I've always been a fan of term limits on every board I've been on, and so far it's worked out pretty great. So I hear you, and
yeah, it's just that that is what we're asking, is it would come back with another supervisor, because the supervisor would make a choice, which they always do, it's clean. When a new supervisor comes in, they get to make a choice as to who they want to put on.
But what you're saying is that if the person is still in the position, that supervisor will feel a
They're
little
not in
bit
that
of
position.
pressure.
But they're actually not in that position. When there's a new supervisor, they do come on with their appointees. Period. I mean, that is what happened. Rakina was on actually with Joel Anderson. And he made a choice, that was how she was off for a few months until we put her on as the general. That's exactly what happened when Joel had you come on, which is his choice. So it absolutely does end when the supervisor is gone or makes a different decision in the middle. That's why for me, I am a strong advocate that we don't have term limits, especially in a situation like this where we have trouble getting people on.
Well, we actually do have if we're talking D4, I believe we have 3 and maybe a 4th applicant that are waiting to be reviewed.
Right, I'm saying that supervisor is gonna make her own decision. Period. And it's not, I mean, she obviously reappointed me. But on February 6th, but the other, it does change and it is up to that supervisor. That's why when we say about term limits, to me, it's a false thing that if after Nathan or after Monica finished, if she wanted to keep someone on, I think that should be the ability instead of an arbitrary number of years. And again, it was so complicated with the general member gets only 1 year, and that's considered a term.
The at-large,
8 years.
the at-large member is appointed for two years.
Okay.
But can be reappointed.
Yes,
Oh, we could, so you
Sure.
could do a second 2 year.
sure, because they're two.
Right, but they don't get the 8 years that other people,
Right.
is why I'm saying that I think that that's false. If the group wants that person on, why would we not have the ability to keep that person on when they're already invested and we know that they show up and we know that they do work or whatever it is? But I mean, ultimately, it's gonna be up to the board of supervisors to vote this in. And I think what we're supposed to do is, they're supposed to get feedback about what are some of the things that we're
So we would need to, as a committee, vote on whether we wanted to recommend to the supervisors to remove term limits. And also recommend that somehow there's a waiver to allow us to not have to have the quorum in person, but could be virtually. Those are the two things I heard.
But yeah, and we're not gonna make a decision today.
No, we need to have.
Providing recommendations to these.
Right, but what I actually saying was, we just decided at the beginning, but I think we were there when we talked about it to have this extended, continued until next month, but just to start the
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, because that would be fair to have everybody have it.
Super.
Yeah.
I think I'll see if think about it and come up with more. Decide, maybe I should, maybe that isn't.
And just for clarity, this movement would not remove term limits. There are term limits in two places. Term limits are in A74, and that's in general, as well as in the ordinance. And this question is regarding removing it from the law where it cannot be waived.
But they could remove it from both. Am I right?
It is a board policy, so the board could do, conceivably, make any movements, any changes they like.
So this is, just to clarify, this is not for us individually, this is for.
Well, it would be, so the ordinance,
Right.
there is an ordinance clause, an ordinance that speaks specifically to the Committee for Persons with Disabilities. There is a law that says that the Committee for Persons with Disabilities has a term limit of 2 terms.
And what is that law?
That is section, it's
I didn't need the section, but I'm just trying to understand the difference. So it's not the A74, but because that's not an ordinance. What is the ordinance?
the ordinance is, as I was gonna say, section 84 of the, it's 3N in the administrative ordinance. So I can scroll up here.
3N I'm just trying to get the.
Article 3N, which gives rise to the San Diego County Committee for Persons with Disabilities.
Okay, and 3N is in what document?
Is in the County Code of Administrative Ordinances, the law that the Board of Supervisors has laid out.
Okay, that's what I was really asking, is just what is it, where is it that it's gonna get changed? And so how do they change that? Does that have to be a public vote?
Yes, but look, when you say public vote, it is a vote of the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, so it's not that it's gonna go on a ballot. For regular people to vote on.
I've been instructed that it's a board of supervisor vote, not a public election.
Okay, so both of these changes are a board of supervisor vote.
That's my understanding.
Okay, and that's what I, so it's not, we're not talking about changing the city of Lebanon or, you know, or.
We're talking about changing the county law, not the city law.
Right.
That applies to everybody in the county that term limits applies to.
No,
This particular law, section of the law is your committee.
Okay.
It would not, there are other committees could conceivably change their administrative code, and this committee could keep it.
yeah, I was getting the impression, and I could be wrong, Karen, that you're talking about, since there's term limits in National City or Vero Beach that would affect them or school boards.
No, my brain was thinking that, oh, the board of supervisors wants to remove term limits. That's
No.
what my brain was thinking.
No,
No, this would be specific to Article 3N of the county code. For this committee, they want to hear if this committee believes term limits is causing a challenge for finding volunteers.
And I think we should table this till next month so that everybody has an opportunity to weigh in on that.
that's fine.
I don't think we need to make a motion on that, right?
No.
Yeah.
You don't need to, but you can.
I make a motion to table,
Well, we decided we were tabling, we were not voting on this.
She
I'm in the
can
middle.
make the motion.
so we, yeah, so I'd like to make a motion, to table, agenda item 5 to update the administrative code boards, commissions and committees until next month so that the entire board or whoever does show up, has a say.
I second.
Are there any objections? That's fine. We.
It actually, so are there any objections would be if there wasn't a motion, since there is a motion, it needs to be voted on. Yeah, yay, nay.
That's fine. Actually, you can say, are there any objections to doing it, to.
We covered this, Madam Chair, we covered this, through the training, and I'm sharing what the training had stated. So, you could ask for any objections and then not require a motion, but when a motion has been made and appropriately seconded, then it needs to be voted upon.
Fine, who's in agreement? That's why I was trying to say.
Aye.
Decided,
So there are 2 yays,
I mean, yes.
3 yays, unanimous. Thank you. We're now at 4:05, and the next item up on agenda is bylaws for committee and a subtopic of protocol for committee letters. And potentially in the bylaws could be, if you look at the committee determined to remove bylaws from the ordinance, the administrative ordinance, you could put it in to your bylaws, and that would override the A-74.
So I have given it a stab, I'm gonna just say, thank you for sending me the different samples. I have said I would take this on, and I have, I would say, a good working document that I need to continue working on while reviewing what we already have in terms of ordinances to make sure that they all sync up. So if we're going to move forward with bylaws for the committee, I'm happy to continue working on it and reporting on next month.
Is there a motion?
I don't know that we need a motion. She is giving her report about it, saying that she not, I mean, it's not ready, it wasn't sent out, it's not something that I think that we can work on today, or because there's nothing in front of us.
Did I hear a question of whether the committee wanted to wanted you to continue on bylaws? Is that?
Yes, I think the last time we talked about this, there was a question of whether what the will of the committee was in terms of having bylaws. I personally support it. Obviously, I wouldn't be working on it if I didn't. I just think it's good to have bylaws for committees.
What do you think that will be added to how we are functioning? Doesn't the A74 pretty much serve as bylaws?
As I understand it, our own bylaws overrides the 74. Right? 'Cause
Right, that section, there's a section of A74 that is a backstop, if you will. I'm gonna use that term loosely, but that says that if your committee does not have bylaws, this section would apply. So then by establishing bylaws that this particular committee deemed that it wanted to work under would supersede that section of the policy A74. A74, the rest of A74 would still apply, but that subsection that stands there is in the event your committee does not have a bylaw.
What is that section?
One moment.
Participation in county boards, commissions, and committees.
Is it that full section, Todd, that Carolyn is referring to? I don't know. That's what you were reading from.
It says on 6, A74-6, each advisory committee will prepare bylaws which must be reviewed by county council and approved by the board of supervisors. Bylaws of advisory committees shall contain the following sections, which I should, you mark this page right here.
But
And information, purpose and authority, terms of office, duties, officers, subcommittees, organization, procedures. I don't see the actual section that says if you don't have them.
that A74 substitutes.
7.
Oh, 7, okay.
Seven is that section. I got it up on the screen.
Oh,
And what is 7 say?
That's what you were reading, right?
I was reading 6. Well, there's a bunch of different numbers here. I was reading,
Bylaws of advisory committee. I don't know if that,
I was reading, advisory committee policies and procedures. Item 6, which is on page 10 of 17.
And that would be policies and procedures as opposed to guidelines. Right, Jeanette?
No, I have 17.
so up on the screen is bylaws of advisory committees. And it reads as, yeah, that's, so it's, each advisory committee will prepare bylaws which must be reviewed by county council and approved by the board of supervisors. Bylaws of advisory committees shall contain the following sections and information. Exceptions may be made to cover unique situations.
Okay, so that's 7. Todd,
Yes,
okay. That's the thing that you were reading, right, Jeanette, but you.
Yeah, I have it listed as 6.
I don't know if that may have been an old copy, I don't
I'll
know.
get a new copy. Okay, but it says the same thing. So that kind of answers the question about whether we want to have bylaws. It says we should.
Yeah.
So-
So then we can change that part. I'm just trying to see how much does it actually let us change.
Well, inside of the policies and procedures gives us the latitude, right? Because those are just the how our tasks and our activities should happen. And then the bylaws are really the laws crafted off of those policy procedures.
So Todd, where in the 7 does it say that if a committee creates its own bylaws, it takes the place of A74?
It does, A74, I think, is a carve out, right?
But no, it's a.
It says that, let's see, which must be reviewed, so. You know, that may have been in another, version, but. I'm thinking that, I can look at that and see if for time purpose, we can
That's fine.
review that.
That's fine, I just was trying to see, but my ultimate goal was trying to see. Like, is it worth it to get bylaws, because what part of A74 would not affect us? If it's, because you're creating a whole extra document. And is it worth it, I mean, if it's specifically only dealing with the term limits, or it's specifically only dealing with. I don't think we can do anything about the virtual based on in this, that's what I was asking.
Well, there was the topic, the subtopic on this was protocol for committee letters.
Oh, no, I thought we were still talking about, we're talking about bylaws and whether or not we needed to replace the A74, and I thought it was related to term limits, because you kept saying that it is talking about term limits in 2 places. It didn't have to do with letters.
Well, I'm thinking that we're not talking about term limits at this point, we're talking about the bylaws. The term limits was a discussion in the updates to the administrative code, but bylaws are how the committee will govern itself. I know you know that, but so it's bigger than just term limits.
Did I understand that the term limitation is in the A74 and the ordinance? And that your thought was that that section of A74 could be substituted by us writing in our bylaws?
The statement was that your bylaws would overrule the bylaws subsection that's in A74, because your bylaws would then supersede what's in the policy bylaws.
And do the policy bylaws affect the term limits? Is that where it's stated?
There is something in the policy, but it actually states for terms, it states something to the effect of membership and term of office is under Article 2. It says term of office as set forth in the establishing authority, which would actually be the ordinance.
Okay, so if it was changed in the ordinance, that would be enough.
Right, but then we're hamstrung by that 74, right? Because the committee, I mean, you want to have, every committee I've ever been on has bylaws, because you're so unique from the next. You want to have your own.
It doesn't affect the term limits, is all I'm asking.
Oh,
Right,
yeah.
it's
I
bigger,
know.
it's,
Not
the
really.
bylaws are how we as a committee decide within what we're allowed to do, how we want to govern ourselves. And I think my experience on this committee has been that we have gotten in the weeds a bit on some topics. And I think to have bylaws would be helpful as a document to point us to, we come to this is our plan of action, this is how we do things. If there's a procedure for writing letters on behalf of the committee, you don't then have to get in the weeds about that process anymore. We've put it all to paper, we've determined how we want to run ourselves within the constraints, of course, of what we're allowed to do. And then we move on to the important work that we want to get done. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I'm separating it from the term limits. 'Cause
Yes,
initially-
because it's,
Initially, he had said that it is in A74.
right, that was a different agenda.
We didn't finish the other agenda. I was still talking about the term limits.
Okay,
And so that's why I'm just being clear that the bylaws don't affect, would not have anything to do with taking that away.
right, that's a different process.
It would, right, so A74 having bylaws doesn't, it does not affect it. He was saying it was in two places.
Right,
So that's why I'm trying.
and A74 says every committee shall have bylaws, and I think we should live by that. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Now, again, is there a motion to proceed with the establishment of bylaws?
I make a motion to proceed with the establishment of bylaws for the committee for persons with disabilities. As stated.
I thought we just did it. That was what the vote was.
No, that was for tabling,
That was for agenda item previous.
that was for tabling the previous agenda.
Okay,
I second.
so, all in favor, say yes.
I,
So, that's fine, so it's still tabled till next month. Because
well, I think we made some decisions about it, and so it's not a process that we're gonna finish in 1 month, so it's report back in a month. So that's the okay with that.
So not table, but report back, because that's different, right? We don't want to table something that it's already, like, she's already started down the path of crafting. Right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna move it to the next month in the effect of helping her fill any of the gaps in that what the committee as a whole wants, because that's what she needs.
Right.
She needs the voice of the whole to best craft the best bylaws for this committee.
That's fine, that was what we were talking about, she didn't, you needed to wait till next month. Anyway, but we worked out. It's fine,
Okay.
so.
So I did, sorry for the delay, but I did find the location of the term limits that is outside of the bylaws section. So it
Is
is,
that on page 3?
actually, I think it's page 6. Under appointments to committees, vacancies process, that is B. Membership on a committee, county committee shall be limited to 2 consecutive terms for the purpose of this limitation. A term shall include any appointments to fill a vacancy for 1/2 or more of a term. Members of a committee whose terms have expired shall continue to serve until such time as they are either replaced or reappointed. And that is outside of section 7, which
When you say outside of section 7,
not included in.
so where is it, and if it's not 7, is it 8? Is it?
So section 7 is where the bylaws starts,
Okay,
and this is in. It's subsection B of 1 in appointments to committees, D.
so it's D,
D1B,
okay. And D is about appointments.
right. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is disability rights and behavioral health services. This is committee member Jessica Kramer qualifying a disability checklist, ADA request form for IHSS clients, and SB 43 behavioral health.
Did Jessica make it on at all?
She is, but is she allowed to participate?
Yes, Jessica is here and Jessica would love to participate.
Hello,
Oh, so we do then need to do the emergency or just cause, in order to, I didn't know she was on.
Do we need to make a motion for that?
So she needs to make a request, for, hi Jessica, are you using a just cause or the emergency?
Just cause is what we had discussed. Jessica?
Yes, that sounds good.
So, I guess someone want to move that we accept a request for a just cause.
We're
I move
actually,
that
we're pulling up, one moment, we're gonna
Okay.
pull up to make sure that we're appropriate, doing everything appropriately.
So just cause can be used for childcare or caregiving need of a child, parent, grandparent, grandchild, sibling, spouse, or domestic partner. A contagious illness that prevents a member from attending in person, a need related to a physical or mental disability, travel on official business of the legislative body or another state or local agency. Jessica, you would use up to 2 meetings per calendar year.
Yeah.
I think,
Go ahead, Jessica, go ahead.
I think that being on business of another county board would allow me to do just cause for this meeting.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to use my just cause because I had a conflict due to a different county board.
But I also believe that there was part of that that said if you couldn't get here, and I don't remember if it was said the word transportation or. There is a part of that though. In the just.
Are we okay to move forward though with my just cause due to other legislative body business?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Well, let me not, are we good, Todd?
one moment.
Okay, no problem.
Then,
Thanks.
They're either, in one case, there needs to be a vote, and in another case, one moment.
Thank you.
So it is.
She only needs approval for the emergency.
Okay. So then,
We have a motion and we have a second.
what is the motion?
To accept. Yeah, we do.
I haven't finished, I haven't said it.
What did you do?
I move that, no,
We don't need it.
oh, we don't need it, okay.
We need it for emergency circumstances, not just cause.
Oh, okay.
Do you need anything from us?
No.
Okay, good. Hi, Jess.
Hi, everyone.
Hey. So go ahead with your report.
Okay, great. Update for Behavioral Health Advisory Board. Two main things. The first is that the Behavioral Health Advisory Board each year determines which subcommittees they want to do. And for the last 2 years, they've done 3 subcommittees. One is community engagement, the other is criminal justice, and the third is alcohol and other drugs. The board decided to not continue those 3 boards this year. Although the criminal justice board had, a lot of activity from other members of the community and seemed to be working well. The decision was to redefine the subcommittees for 2024 based around the work that we're doing with Care Court and SB 43. And so there will be some future meetings to decide how we're going to subcommittee around the issues of Care Court and SB 43. We also have a Care Court convening, which is a small subcommittee in the first week of March, where we'll be discussing some of the concerns around Care Court. Some of that is from feedback from the community. And of course, for me, it'll be primarily from a disability rights perspective. One of the areas that I see challenge is in the role of the supporter, which is a defined role in the CARE Act and Care Court process. Each county has the ability to tweak the state's guidance just a little bit. And the way that our county has implemented the supporter role, which I think is a very important role, especially can be a very important advocacy role for a person with disabilities, that role has somewhat fell to the wayside. So I think that there's quite a bit of room. And as this committee moves forward with understanding more about the different roles associated with Care Court, it's something that we could potentially weigh in on as well. And then a couple members of the Behavioral Health Advisory Board have been included in a larger stakeholder meeting for SB 43. Our county Board of Supervisors voted several months ago to delay the implementation of Senate Bill 43, which is the expansion of the definition of grave disability to include standalone or co-occurring substance use disorder as potential grounds for implementing a 5150 72-hour hold around a person's inability to maintain food, clothing, shelter, personal safety, and adequate medical care. And so this stakeholder group is breaking down into a few groups. The one that I've been involved with so far is the subcommittee on law enforcement training, as well as alternative responders such as the psychiatric emergency response team and the mobile crisis response team, to be well trained in the complexities of this very complicated legislature. And some of the different stakeholders are members of our hospital boards, members of our regional task force on the homeless, Jewish Family Services Patient Advocacy, the McAllister Institute, the Mobile Crisis Response Team, the Harm Reduction Coalition of San Diego, and a number of people from Behavioral Health Services. And that's about it for the behavioral health update. Shall I move on to the guidance for qualifying a person with a disability for the average patrol person or average prosecutor, as we discussed with the work we've been doing with the district attorney's office?
Yeah,
Okay, I don't have my checklist here to show you. That was an error on my part with the short notice conflict of schedule. So I'd like to table for next month so that I can bring in a handwritten copy to share with our committee.
okay, do you have any comments about it thus far?
I just hope that we can weave it into the 2024 work we're doing, continued work we're doing with the DA. I know that as a committee, we owe them some more feedback and looking at how we can have ongoing feedback and an ongoing working relationship with the DA around this issue. The DA did commit to providing guidance with this checklist, but we haven't yet seen a copy from them of what they might have in mind. And I've already presented kind of a general checklist that I've used and have helped other people use when they're applying for elder and dependent adult restraining orders from the court. Seems to me it would be a very similar, bar, no pun intended. But essentially, do you have a handicap placard? Do you have a ADA service animal? Do you have in-home support services or other caregiving? Do you have other Americans with Disabilities Act or fair housing accommodations that you require to carry out normal activity? Those are some of the few right off the top of my head. Are you working with an organization that provides services to people with disabilities? That's based on the that I know from a lot of personal and advocacy experience that the sheriff's department will defer to the regional center to see if somebody qualifies for the penal codes around protecting a person that's a qualified dependent adult. I know I've shared with this group before that a dependent adult is often a misnomer and that our legislature has worked hard and is continuing to work hard to remove the term dependent adult or dependent person from the legislature. And along with that, we'll be reducing a lot of the challenges that we face in the community of people with disabilities around, somebody being disabled enough to qualify as a dependent adult. And while the legislature has added to the definition of dependent adult, regardless of whether the person lives independently, that updated definition is actually often missing from literature. It's missing in a lot of the state literature for California. For instance, it's missing in the state literature for in-home supportive services that goes out to every IHSS recipient or caregiver. It's missing in the sheriff's current elder and dependent adult abuse policy. So there are areas where there's this misunderstanding that a dependent adult is somebody that is under a conservatorship or a guardianship, or that they don't live independently, or that they live in a 24-hour facility. And those are those are errors, those are misnomers, because in fact, dependent adult has a much broader definition. Hey, come here. Hi, you're good, thank you. Come here, hey, you can't say hi. All right, sorry about that. But yes, essentially, we are seeing the term dependent adult and dependent person being removed from the legislature, and that will make our conversation, much easier moving forward, because it will be replaced with adult with disability, essentially merging our current definition for dependent adult with the definition of adult with disability to make it much easier to protect a wide array of people with disabilities. So I would really just like for us to continue to incorporate this in the work that we're doing with the district attorney and the sheriffs. And I would like to bring next meeting a more cohesive, inclusive list, and would love for our committee to be able to weigh in to add anything to that list that could help somebody assert or put in writing as part of their safety plan, or to be able to communicate to law enforcement that they do qualify for those protections under whether it's Penal Code 368, which is elder and dependent adult and person with disabilities abuse, whether it's 422.6, which would be hate crime, in our scope would be hate crime against a person with a disability, or third are the 3 penal codes that protect people with disabilities who utilize service animals. That's it. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
The one question I had, it's nice to see you, can you tie in the blue envelope, with San Diego Sheriff? Can you tie that? Cause it seems just logical to tie that program in for what you're trying to do.
I mean, I agree so much, and I love the Blue Envelope program. I love it in its openness, its inclusivity. I love that the literature shows people that do not present with visible disabilities. I love the message that it's sending. It is a self-guided process, so a person with a disability or someone in their life would essentially have to, present. They would have to figure out that the opportunity exists, and then participate in it. And then from there, it does give officers what they call time and space. So there's slow it down and give a little bit of space, maybe back up a little bit, think about the situation, think about what you're doing, as opposed to, the really fast decision making that law officers are often faced with, making the blue envelope material, insignia, and wearables can help an officer give time and space. But when it comes to this senior and disability victimization work we're talking about, it's still really being primarily used for seniors and what we consider in the most restrictive way to be a dependent adult, which would be maybe somebody in a 24-hour care facility or under a guardianship of some kind. And so until we grow the understanding of senior and disability victimization, from the much more restrictive version that is now elder and dependent adult abuse, without growing that, and also without making some improvements to the other special needs registry that the sheriffs offer, which is the Take Me Home program. That is essentially for cognitive disabilities, but there's a little bit of mismessaging in the sheriff's department right now, and I think this is something that we can look towards for our year 2024 as something that we could help make recommendations on. Is that the messaging for the Take Me Home program is confusing, in that the eligibility is open to people with developmental disabilities, autism, dementia, and other cognitive disabilities. But when it explains the actual criteria, it lists only 3 diagnoses. And that is very confusing. So myself, as a person with a cognitive disability, I would, I would be able to register for the Take Me Home program. But then if I'm interacting with a law enforcement partner who knows the Take Me Home program is specifically for somebody with developmental disability, dementia, or autism. I'm sorry, I'm kind of messing up the 3 specific diagnoses, and forgive me, but any of you guys want to look up the Take Me Home program from the sheriffs, or if you're looking up any of the blue envelope messaging from the county and the sheriffs, they're including a link to the Take Me Home program, which is a special needs registry, whereas the blue envelope program is a voluntary, self-promoted method of communicating. There's no registry for the Blue Envelope program. So the Blue Envelope program, the person would communicate to law enforcement either by having a wearable like a seatbelt cover or a sticker on the back of the car, and then could ask to see the blue envelope, and hopefully the blue envelope does a good job of conveying what that person's accommodation needs are, which I think is one of the great challenges of this program, is how hard it is to communicate that in such a small area of space. But that's what Blue Envelope is offering. Whereas Take Me Home has a little bit more information. It's in the system. Officers can be pre-notified of a condition at the dispatch level. And so right now the sheriffs have a little bit of confused messaging about who it's for, who's eligible, but they don't seem receptive just yet to opening it up to be slightly more inclusive the way the descriptor for the program says, and instead have only 3 listed diagnoses. So between the Take Me Home program being a little bit confusing in messaging who it's serving and who can utilize it, along with a real lacking of the law enforcement agencies like the sheriffs having the best practice model, which is mandated by a Senate bill, and it lists like 27 different very specific criteria around interacting with a person with a disability who's potentially been victimized. What we're seeing are these old policies or policies that don't have the mandated criteria of what we call the model policy. And the model policy was mandated by SB 338 on or after April 19th of 2021. And it has very specific, really beautifully written terms around what we call best practice senior and disability victimization, or a little bit, of the older nomenclature, which is elder independent adult abuse.
I think there's a lot of synergistic possibility with the Blue Envelope program for this, in the sense that they could probably expand it. This is a sidebar, but they could probably expand it. Every time I get my disability placard next year or whatever, they should be dropping information inside of that renewal.
I'm glad you said that, because the Sheriff's Department, alongside with Riverside Sheriff's Department, have made this a state legislative item that they're working with up in Sacramento, and they are hoping, I love what you said. I think that's a great addition, and this is why this committee can, weigh in effectively. I know that what they're hoping is that the blue envelope materials will be available at any DMV, and the ideal with that is it takes some of the pressure off of different local law enforcement agencies. Some have more money than others, some have more staff than others, and so rather than putting the burden entirely on each law enforcement agency to hold, organize, and dispense the materials, there is an idea that we can involve the California legislature, make a state bill, and have the materials available at the DMV. And I think your suggestion of weaving it in with the handicap placard is exceptional.
Just as a time check, we have 15 minutes and a couple more items to cover off. Committee structure with vacancies and elections, and letters of acknowledgement for district attorney.
Thank you. Well, I'm done unless anybody has any more questions.
No, you have to say.
I don't think she's moving anywhere. But do we have any other questions for Jessica? Is the other two or not?
I think Rakina has her hand up.
Ooh, hey, Rakina.
And
Oh, I'm sorry, hello.
I think there's also a message in the message board.
Go.
Yes, because I've actually had my hand up for a really long time.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Well, we can open back up for non-agenda comment from the public.
Well, it was related to an agenda comment.
No, you're lying, Rakina.
And so it was just regarding the changing of the law about term limits. And, my thinking as a person who has served on the board as well as a citizen at large is just that this committee has had so much trouble with maintaining members, with recruiting members, and that I think that there are enough seats that honestly, removing term limits is not going to prevent new people from coming on the board, because there are multiple ways for people to be placed on the committee. So I think that it really should be considered so that there can be and the other thing is for there to be a diverse group. Because if we keep it so strict and small, because it's going to be small as long as you have these term limits, I think that we don't offer the people of our county as much representation. So that was my comment.
I appreciate that you commented. We're going to continue that conversation next month. And obviously you heard my comments. I'm in total agreement that we need to get rid of the term limits. For those reasons and others. Did you have any comments related to Jessica's report back?
No, just thankful to Jessica for doing that work, and sounds like it's going well.
I think we all very much appreciate, I'll speak for myself, totally appreciate that you're staying involved in the weeds of that. So on the committee structure, I mean, to me, there's just, obviously, it's up to the supervisors as to when and if they want to make those appointments. I know that is one of the reasons that District 4 wanted, actually asked the board and clerk about making those changes. So we'll continue it. I don't, does anyone have anything else to say about the structure of the committee? I mean, it's kind of not in our hands.
Just the vacancies now.
So, that's all. And then the last one was about what time?
Elections.
So we can, we were looking at that being on the March agenda, so.
No, it's on, pardon, but it's on this one. We're doing the elections. And I received an email from Todd stating the same, I believe.
I didn't receive that, and I'm the one that made up the agenda with Jeanette and Todd.
We talked about having elections on the agenda.
To talk,
we met.
but not to have.
Well, we have a quorum.
We were not gonna have the elections until March. That was what they were last year. And that's what we had talked about. He had talked about maybe a structure, but the elections are scheduled for March. They were talking.
In the past, we've had, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, in the past, we've had the elections in January, and then they moved back for extenuating circumstances to March. But the elections need to be done on a timely basis.
So I just want to point out that our minutes that we approved, set committee officer nominations will occur at the end of February meeting. At the February meeting, the election will take place at the March meeting.
We talked about this in March. That's what.
But we need to take nominations today.
So.
So I would like to, I want to ask a question first. Jessica, are you interested in vice chair? Because this lovely lady next to me is doing a fantastic job, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes to make a nomination, so he doesn't have the time or whatnot for vice chair.
I
Oh, you're on
actually,
mute.
I actually.
You want to finish?
Sorry, I feel like Jeanette's done a wonderful job. As I've stated before, I think my particular set of disability challenges lends for a chair position, even a vice chair position, to be a little more difficult for me. And while I'm open to learning over time, I would be good with Jeanette continuing. But if for any reason she doesn't want to, I would be open to the chair
So
position.
can I run this? I'm gonna take nominations for chair. It wasn't jumping to that, and I am nominating Jessica for chair.
Well, that's why we started with the conversation first, because she just stated she doesn't have, and I don't wanna put words in your mouth, Jess, if you wanna restate for chair.
No, I think you heard me okay.
Jessica, do you have any nominations?
I don't have any nominations. I hear there's 2 on the table and I'm good.
There's not 2 on the table. I nominated you for chair. If you're
There's no
including
second.
that, if you're including that, then yes.
We're
Do
talking
we have
about,
do we have another nomination?
we're talking about chair, Jess.
Yes, do we have a nomination for chair besides me?
For, no, not at this moment.
I would like to nominate Carolyn.
So, okay, but I just nominated Jess.
And we didn't have a second,
We didn't ask for a second yet.
but you have to have a second to make it a nomination, right?
No, I just nominated her and I didn't ask for a second yet.
Right, so she made another nomination within the same scope, so it's the same, so there's 2 nominations up, it's okay.
So Jessica, will you accept the nomination? Is where are we gonna go before I ask for a second?
I mean, I appreciate you nominating me, Michelle. I think that I will decline.
Okay, then I guess I kind of feel like Susan wanted to be a part of this conversation, she's not on. Okay, so I know you wanted to make a second nomination, I just wanted to start with Jessica. Okay.
No, she made the nomination, I didn't.
Do we ask for a second, or do we ask if she'll accept? I don't know.
Well, right, this
It's
minute,
not a vote.
Okay,
there's nothing,
The discussion of.
there's nothing in our
okay,
rules.
okay, just want to make sure.
And there's nothing in our rules that doesn't mean someone can't come up next month and run.
From the, taking off.
From the
floor, right, okay.
So it's not, this was just to get an idea of who was interested.
Okay,
So if Carolyn has been nominated, that's fine. Is anyone else interested? And people can self-nominate as well.
Do I have to nominate myself?
no, I already nominated.
I don't think I do.
You already nominated.
I say we can self-nominate. If anyone else wanted to self-nominate. So the same for vice chair.
So for vice chair, I wanted to nominate Jeanette.
Okay, I will continue, yes.
I still really wanted to get Jessica.
You're welcome to nominate her, she's just stated that she.
Jessica, I'm moving you for vice chair.
I would like to continue with where we're going with this. I think Jeanette does a great job and would like to see her continue. And while I appreciate your faith in me, I want to grow this year to maybe be able to fill that role some other time if I'm ever nominated.
Okay, so like, at this point, and again, we're willing to do the election next month, but then people can self-nominate at that point. That's good.
Next,
So that's it.
the next item is letters of acknowledgement for district attorney.
I have no update at this point, so we'll have to.
All right, and then I did want to share in the, as far as new business, future agenda items. Coming up on March 28th is the County of San Diego's Ethics Awareness Month. And on the 28th of March is the Ethics Fair at the County Operations Center. This is an annual opportunity for employees to visit different booths and become aware of different activities that are going on, in the sense of making employees more aware of the Committee for Persons with Disabilities. I have asked if the committee would be invited to host a booth. And what that would require is to man the booth and then to be able to speak to employees as they come around all the different booths and share what the purpose of the Committee for Persons with Disabilities is, how some of the activities that the committee has been involved in, et cetera. So I am sharing the, on the screen, I'm sharing the flyer. And then I'll share it for those that are online.
What are the hours and what is the day of the week?
So it's March 28th and the hours are lunch hour from 11:30 in the morning to 1 p.m. The day of the week is, I think that's Wednesday, yes, so it's a Wednesday,
You said on the 28th, March 28th?
March 28th.
That's
Oh,
Thursday.
wait,
That's
that might be February. Yeah, March 28th, that's right, it is Thursday, it's usually on a Thursday.
And where is it?
It's at the Commons in the county, at the County Operations Center. So that's sort of in the middle of the campus up in Kearney Mesa. Claremont Mesa, Kearney Mesa, I'm out of town.
Yeah, it's Claremont.
Claremont, okay, so then it's at Overland and just north of Claremont Mesa.
It's like 1510 or 15, or
They're saying 5,500.
5,500, yes.
Yeah.
55 or 5510.
But it's where the cafeteria is, so there'll be booths, tables that'll be set up.
Is that first floor?
It's actually gonna be outdoors, so there are tables outside that are where people will come out. And so Sheriff, I believe I heard Sheriff is gonna have a table. They usually do, probation usually does. Different departments within the county will host and then have giveaways, little swag that they hand out and those types of things. But again, I thought that this would be a good opportunity for your regular employees to hear about the Committee for Persons with Disabilities, to meet some of the faces behind the committee. Again, that is coming up on the 28th. the meeting, the next March meeting would be the 20th. So it really does require a quick decision because we need to get the table for you and the chairs and that type of thing.
So Jeanette and I just talked about it and we would be happy amongst everybody else who wants to come, but we'd be happy to man it for a couple of hours if anybody else wants to come along with us.
Is there a motion? I'd like to have a motion.
I make a motion that Jeanette and Carolyn,
Well,
yeah, to be.
maybe, you know, you don't have to. But then,
Like, not espresso, like it's a monster, it's not espresso. This is what happens. I make a motion, for the,
For us to have the groups on the video. Is that what you say?
you gotta make a motion.
I second.
And could you restate that motion for the minutes, for the,
I make a motion that, this committee, persons on this committee attend a March 28th, ethics awareness event, at the ethics fair.
fabulous, thank you.
Yes.
And that was, moved
Second.
and seconded,
I think I broke a record for seconds.
and then there, the vote.
Those in favor? Aye.
Is there, we have a member on the line as well.
Oh, yeah. Jessica, do you have any, are you in favor of that? You're on mute.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Thank you all.
Bring Lucius.
Always.
And it is now 5:03.
Right. Okay, so we will end the meeting. And see you all next month.
Can't wait.
Bye.